What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. You might have noticed a few changes around the channel. It's no longer focused upon me as an individual. I really wanted to expand to include everyone in the sort of community that we're building here upon stock trading, options trading, futures trading, you name it. We are a trading community, and that's why we are now the Trade Brigade. We're all attacking the market, trying to pull profit out and minimize our losses in the process. So as a community, let's move forward as the Trade Brigade. As always, if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do so in the description of this video. Again, I send out between 5 and 10 stock picks for the week, things I think will generally move over the course of the week, whether or not that's long or short. It's all dependent upon what opportunities present themselves. So without further ado, let's get into the analysis. Alrighty, starting off on our SPY weekly chart, you can see that we still have our higher set of lows being formed here. Now this is going to be a very critical point in this area because whether or not this maintains itself or gives up will sort of determine the next trend for a little while, in my opinion. So if we give up this set of lows in here, 50 SMA goes on the weekly, then I think we revisit our level here at 272. You can see that's sort of our last support before we get, I guess you could call something in here around the next one after that. So that's 262, $10 lower than that. And then really after that, it's the New Year's sort of set of lows down in here, excuse that little click, and the 200 SMA on the weekly that'll sort of be catching up to that area if for some reason we do see some sort of massive move to the downside. Now keep in mind we do have that set of highs up here that haven't really produced much of a higher high, so we do need to break through this level if we continue the uptrend, but for right now we're monitoring this set of lows. If it gives, I think things do move further to the downside. So zooming into the daily chart to see some more nuanced levels, you can see this is our sort of top area that never really gave as we sort of knocked on the door, as I put it multiple times. 50 SMA rejected us, the tweets came out and the trade war news and everything sort of all came to a big grinding move downward on Friday. You can see the volume there is quite impressive. So I think the selling isn't really done. You can see this little tail here. That's sort of a reaction to the end of the day. People closing out their shorts, got a nice little bounce. It's still a higher set of lows. That's why this trend line is in place. So if this sort of gives up, then I think that we do see that move to the 200 SMA on the daily. And like I said, if that gives, we are targeting our set of lows from in here right around 272. That could very well happen this upcoming week. The Qs very similar. Our higher lows are a little bit steeper, which is a good sign, but we are starting to violate it there on Friday's session. So whether or not this trend line is completely violated, we'll only be able to tell on Monday morning. Whether or not we sort of gap down below it and see it dribble down to our 200 SMA on the daily here on the Qs, very well could be possible. Again, I think the sellers are pretty strong on the market. All this news, although we are a technical channel, you do have to give credit to the news. It's not coincidence that something like that comes out. The market slides, so we do have to at least acknowledge it. So I think the news in combination of giving up some of these key supports could very well send the market in the Qs down to the 200 SMA on the daily, and then our next stop after that is 169.42. If some sort of miraculous reversal comes out of this trend line touch here, then we are looking again to retarget our 188.61, knock on that door again, and somehow if it does happen and that breaks, we have our resistances mapped out for us. IWM just being sort of choppy. The one thing you can see here, though, is we do tend to think of IWM as a leader. It has given up some of these lows already. You can see we had a low here, got violated, lower low, and now we're sort of even at that low there at 144.96 support. You can see that sort of acted as support in this area in the past. So if this gives, I think this one is sort of the easy one to play. You can see our next stop is quite clearly all the way back down to sort of our New Year's low in here, and that low is right around 125. Let's draw that one in. I cleaned up the charts just to make this a little bit easier to visualize, not so much noise going on. So that is sort of our next stop if we do give up this key area on the chart where we are right now. Again, we do have a descending trend line we could draw in here. Just things not looking too hot for IWM. Looks like the bearish momentum is in full force. Big bearish volume on Friday, and again, sitting right at a very key trend line or price level. If that breaks, things could certainly get nasty. Getting into our companies now, starting off with Apple as always. You can see we're starting to sort of give up this uptrend that we sort of had established. The overall uptrend, if we zoom way out, we can see indeed the uptrend is still intact, as you can see by this longer term trend line. However, if we do zoom back in, the shorter term, I think Apple being one of those stocks that's very easily affected by what the overall market is doing. This nasty day on Friday, sitting right here around the 50 SMA, closed below, even poked below there on Friday. I think a move lower is in store. Again, the higher highs couldn't continue. We put in a lower high. Now we're just sort of waiting for that lower or equal low. If we get down into this 192.60 level based on the set of lows here, I think then certainly our uptrend is sort of destroyed for the moment. Destroyed is a bit of a strong word, but the shorter term uptrend is sort of put on hold. And we'll really have to reevaluate once we get down to 192 and see how the price is acting around that level. Netflix, nothing really exciting here. We are having this sort of dribble lower ever since we couldn't really get back into that gap that we created on earnings. We do have a bit of a resistance trend line, something like that. It's a little steep. We could even draw in a support, something like, let's just call it the average of those two wicks in here, something like that. So a falling wedge, which is a bullish pattern, actually meaning that the selling is sort of slowly tapering off, and maybe we could see some sort of bottom here, but I don't think it's likely based on the, this past week was essentially all red. We have this big selling wick here. No one's really interested in it, and I've said this in the past. I think the business model in Netflix is flawed. They're paying way too much for premium content, and they're not really collecting that much from subscribers. We all know someone who borrows someone else's Netflix, and the subscriber base is way diluted, I think is the right word, meaning that not everyone who watches Netflix pays for a Netflix subscription, so on and so forth. A little bit too fundamental for our needs. So again, I think the move is lower here to our trend line, see some sort of bounce, consolidate further in this sort of falling wedge that we're in. If we see any sort of break to the upside, I wouldn't put too much import into it. I think some resistance levels that we could target if we do see a break to the upside are clearly this high here, because we couldn't really find a footing anywhere over that. Even in here is a little bit, I'd just call this a general resistance zone, anywhere in between 310 and 316. You can see the price has never really found any sort of traction above that area. Just going sideways here, couldn't really break through, and then finally falling apart later. So that's kind of what we have here. I'd look for maybe a small bounce there around that level on Monday if we don't gap down below it on the open. And again, that's just a small intraday bounce, because this level is very nuanced and not many people are looking at it. Tesla is kind of similar to Netflix in the sense that it's just sort of dribbling lower after that gap. And again, we do have a nasty day on Friday, sort of sitting right at our lows here. We didn't really produce that bounce, that baby bounce I was talking about happening in Netflix. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Tesla essentially just go lower into the oblivion. Not much in terms of structure to look at here. I think our next stop is clearly 177.50. You could maybe call this area of support something around 206.89, but again, I don't really think it offers that much structure in terms of, I guess maybe I'm wrong. We have some highs here coinciding with the low here, so we'll draw it in. Around 206.97 could be a level of support on Tesla. The least favorite chart of all, BABA. Really just getting nasty on Thursday, Friday with the news and being involved in China and foreign affairs, tariffs, you name it. Not a good look for BABA. So I think what happens here is we do see a move back down into our support trend line. This comes from an overall, if we zoom way out, it's going to be a symmetrical triangle sort of thing that you can see there. So that's sort of what we have here. I don't think that the 200 and the 50 provided any bit of support. As you can see, we just sort of sliced down right through them on Friday. Maybe we see some sort of consolidation, because this is a pretty big move that the market might have to digest a little bit. But again, if the market remains bearish, I think it's quite easily a possibility we come down and touch this support trend line. Facebook, again, dribbling lower. I think the whole FANG and basket of stocks that we look at here are looking quite bearish, with the whole market sort of slumping, if you will. The overall uptrend represented by this white dotted line has been violated by a bit here. I'm leaving it up there for now just because sometimes what happens is we see a move lower and then a retest of that to see if it's confirmed, and the prices get rejected there again and move lower. So that's why it's remaining for now, but just know we are down below it. Our triple bottom that, if you were following along on Instagram, has sort of given way. We had a little support zone down here. You can see tail one, sort of bounce area, and then another tail there on Thursday. Sliced right down through it with the market sell-off there on Friday. Again, red volume picking up. I think our good target would be 172. That's based on some of this resistance we see in here, possibly turning into support. Anything lower than that, the 200 SMA is always a saving grace. You can see that it has respected it quite nicely here. producing a nice bounce, but the 200 SMA right around 169. That'll move upwards as we continue throughout the week. Keep that in mind. And we can always draw this level in here as support as well. That is right around 160.90. Alrighty, Nvidia was trying to do some good things and move up through its trend line, but you can see Friday took that all away. We are sitting at a very super support with our 50 and 200 SMAs sitting right here at the close on Friday. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of baby bounce maybe on Monday morning and then a move lower depending on what the market does, but no coincidence getting rejected at the trend line that we can see, up here, resistance, get rejected here, again, pullback. I could see some, a move down into this area of support around 148.10, and then, we'll sort of reevaluate what happens if we get down into this level. Again, if that gives in a week, which I don't think it will, but if it does, then look for the support trend line to play a role. If we see a bounce here and a big bounce, look for resistance initially here at the trend line intraday and then a move through it. I think there's more than enough touches to it where if we do see any sort of push up, it would easily give and, the prices would move in the upwards direction. So keep that in mind on Nvidia. Microsoft is still sort of in its uptrend. You can see we're coming into our support trend line. I reevaluated and sort of drew it in a little differently. You can remember before prices was just kind of scattered about it, but now it's sort of more accurate with our low here. Respecting that, whether or not we get into it and see a bounce, who knows, depending on the whole market. You can see quite a lot of red volume, but we had that here and then produced a nice solid week after that. So who knows, really strong uptrend on this one. You can see the distance between the 200 and the 50 SMAs just indicating how strong that trend is. I think this is more of a consolidation period after we've had such a strong move up over the course of the year. This is completely normal and healthy, I would say, on a move like this to see some sort of sideways action, let the selling and buying sort of digest, let everyone sort of figure out what's going on, and then another move to happen. So right now I would remain sort of neutral. If we see a sort of bounce off of this, depending on what the market does, again, weigh what the market's doing against what Microsoft is doing. You can see we have some resistance in this area too that I'll draw in there. And yeah, with that, keep in mind the support trend line. Anything lower, 130. Anything higher, we're looking at 139 and 141, the all-time high, as resistance as well. Alrighty, and last but not least, we have Amazon. Amazon is sitting right at a major little diving board point, I guess you could call it, where if the prices continue a little bit lower, you can see we're going to make a nice move down to the 1672 level. We can draw this in. Again, our 200 SMA trying to offer some support, but we closed below it. Big red volume. I think if the market goes downward tomorrow, then we see a move down here to 1672. If the market sort of goes sideways, some more consolidation, but we do have a consolidation zone with our resistance up here at 1833. So look for a move either to the downside here and target 1672, or if we get out of this to the upside, I would target the 50 SMA as resistance on the upside. So that's Amazon. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watch List. If you like the new initiative on the channel, leave the video a thumbs up and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoy this material, subscribe to the channel, and as always, consider subscribing to the newsletter as well. With that, I wish you a green trading week.